Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into how one visionary director, Christopher Nolan, completely shattered Hollywood's financial expectations and, in the process, permanently rewired the landscape of modern blockbuster filmmaking. We are going to explore this unprecedented collision of critical prestige and massive commercial scale that redefined what a global theatrical event could actually be. So let's jump right in and look at the numbers that started the whole thing. $1.07 billion. That is the staggering worldwide box office total of the 2008 film The Dark Knight. To put that into perspective, it took just 6 days for this movie to completely surpass the entire domestic run of its predecessor, Batman Begins. We are talking about a box office success of truly biblical proportions here. But, to understand why this specific number matters so much to us today, we really have to look at how it fundamentally changed the industry's DNA. Which brings us to Section 1, the billion-dollar catalyst. The Dark Knight wasn't just a highly successful sequel, it was a cultural earthquake. The sheer scale of the financial return here is just mind-blowing. Against a pretty hefty production budget of $185 million, the film generated a record-breaking domestic opening weekend of $158.4 million. Think about that. It practically recouped its entire massive budget in just 3 days in the US alone. Benefiting from incredible repeat viewings across literally all demographics, it ultimately crossed that monumental $1.070 billion finish line globally. It became the highest-grossing film of 2008 and, at the time, the fourth highest-grossing film in history. So how exactly did he pull this off? Well, by executing a really delicate balancing act. Nolan took the built-in, massive audience of a superhero blockbuster, and he seamlessly bridged it with the psychological depth of a classic crime thriller. This wasn't just guys in capes punching each other in alleys. It was a gritty, grounded exploration of urban terror and trauma. And by doing that, he established an entirely new template for the Hollywood reboot, proving for sure that audiences were actually hungry for serious, dark, and complex storytelling on a massive scale. And that complexity is just perfectly anchored by Michael Caine's character Alfred Pennyworth. You probably know the line, "Some men just want to watch the world burn." This single quote really encapsulates the film's deep dive into systemic escalation and moral decay, which was heavily driven by Heath Ledger's legendary performance as the Joker. It wasn't just mindless spectacle. It was a philosophical test of how far a hero will go when faced with pure anarchy. Section 2, critical acclaim meets commerce. Because usually in Hollywood, a movie either makes $1 billion or it wins a bunch of Oscars, right? Well, Christopher Nolan decided he was going to do both at the exact same time. The film was almost universally praised. It earned a massive 94% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 8 Oscar nominations, and crucially, a posthumous Best Supporting Actor win for Heath Ledger. This actually made The Dark Knight the very first comic book film to receive major acting awards. That critical prestige legitimized the comic book genre in a way that directly fueled its billion-dollar box office run. It made it a must-see event. Okay, but here is where the story gets absolutely wild. Despite those 8 nominations, the critical and public backlash over its Best Picture snub was so intense that the Academy was literally forced to change its rules. They expanded the Best Picture nominee pool from 5 films to 10, specifically to ensure that high-quality, billion-dollar blockbusters wouldn't just be ignored again. Now that is what you call true industry impact. Moving on to Section 3, the anatomy of scale. Because you don't generate over $1 billion purely on critical acclaim. You need spectacle. Enter the 1570mm IMAX cameras. The Dark Knight made history as the first major feature-length studio production to utilize these things, and they are incredibly heavy, incredibly loud cameras that require specialized rigging. Nolan used them right out of the gate for the opening bank heist sequence. He effectively transformed IMAX from a medium known mostly for nature documentaries into the absolute premium standard for Hollywood blockbusters, capturing Gotham City with a level of clarity and scale we had literally never seen before. And this immense technical gamble paid incredible dividends. Just like IMAX CEO Richard L. Gelfond noted, audiences were actively seeking out the film the way it was meant to be seen. Nolan essentially proved that if you provide a genuinely premium, immersive, high-resolution spectacle, audiences will happily pay a premium ticket price. And that acted as a massive multiplier for the total box office gross. So what happens after you set a brand new billion-dollar benchmark? Well, you hit an even higher ceiling. $1.085 billion. That's the worldwide gross for the 2012 conclusion to the trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises. It proved once and for all that reaching $1 billion wasn't just a fluke for Nolan. It had basically become the baseline expectation. He just constantly raised the bar. Escalating the stakes with a massive $250 million budget, the film maintained really high critical praise with an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Technically, it pushed the boundaries yet again, becoming the very first film to be shot with both 1570mm IMAX cameras and regular 65mm film. It achieved a worldwide opening weekend of nearly $249 million and easily crossed that billion-dollar mark, becoming the highest-grossing Batman film to date. And this incredible one-two punch leads us directly into Section 4, the director as franchise. What happens when a filmmaker brings in over $2 billion with just 2 films? They become a bankable brand unto themselves. Alongside his lead producer and wife, Emma Thomas, Christopher Nolan literally became the franchise. Just trace his post-Batman box office history. It reveals a breathtaking run of totally original, auteur-driven cinema. You have 2010's Inception bringing in $839 million, 2014's Interstellar grossing $774 million, 2017's Dunkirk taking in $526 million, and then 2023's Oppenheimer achieving an astronomical $975 million. It perfectly demonstrates consistent, massive financial returns for films that are incredibly complex and demand a whole lot from their audiences. How does he keep achieving this consistent spectacle outside of the superhero genre? Well, by going to immense practical lengths. For Inception, that meant literally constructing a massive, rotating hotel corridor to shoot actual zero-gravity combat. For Interstellar, it involved collaborating with theoretical physicist Kip Thorne, using actual gravitational equations to accurately render a supermassive black hole on screen. He grounds dream physics and complex sci-fi in tangible reality, creating a theatrical draw that is completely unparalleled. But I think the ultimate test of his bankability really arrived in 2023 with Oppenheimer. The film grossed over $975.8 million at the global box office. I mean, let that sink in for a second. A lengthy, R-rated historical and biographical drama about a scientist building the atomic bomb nearly crossed the billion-dollar threshold. It became the highest-grossing biographical drama in history. That simply does not happen without the Christopher Nolan brand attached to it. Which brings us right up to the present day and his continuing legacy. His upcoming 2026 Homeric epic, The Odyssey, carrying a reported $250 million budget, stormed the global box office with a massive $264 million opening weekend. That marks his absolute best opening since The Dark Knight Rises. The momentum he generated over 15 years ago is still driving hundreds of millions of dollars in ticket sales today. It's truly wild. So that leaves us with a final provocative question to ponder. Christopher Nolan absolutely proved that a brilliant, uncompromising film can make $1 billion. But has that billion-dollar expectation actually saved the blockbuster by demanding higher quality from studios? Or has it kind of doomed it by setting a financial bar so incredibly high that studios are terrified to take risks on anything else? It's definitely something to think about the next time you sit down in an IMAX theater. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this helped you understand the true gravity of the billion-dollar paradigm. See you next time.